Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Mio on MMA podcast, talking about UFC 308 from Abu Dhabi. And we're back in the Fight Island area of the world. And these cards have gotten, I think, progressively worse each time out. Now, don't get me wrong. This card has an excellent main card. Title fight between Ilia Topuria and Max Holloway. Big deal. Khamzat Chimaev versus Robert Whitaker. Big deal. Magomed and Ankalaev versus Alexander Rakic. A big deal, but not necessarily a great fight. Lerone Murphy, Danny Ige, that's great. That's a very good fight. And Sharbullet versus Armin Petrosian. Your mileage may vary depending if you're how big of a Sharbullet fan you are. But the undercard, outside of having only two debuting fighters on the card, it's a bit of a weird one. It's a lot of guys who are really struggling to find themselves. And then like Ivo Aslan versus Rafael Cerqueira, I think is how it's said. That's just a sloppy, non-UFC caliber fight. There's not a lot of up and comingness that I feel excited for on the undercard. I guess that's the key problem, I suppose. Let's talk about a couple of news items in the air right now. Number one, the UFC versus the Lee antitrust case has, at this time, I'm not sure if this has been an approved settlement yet, but it appears we'll get a $375 million settlement for the fighters in the Lee case. About $270 million will go to the fighters, and then about $115 million is lawyers, legal cost fees, etc. So that's something. It's not going to change any like contracts the UFC does. The settlement's not high enough, and there is no ordered changes to the whole deal. That will probably be more determined in the UFC versus Johnson antitrust case, which is yet to settle, yet to finalize. I'm not entirely certain that that's going to end up anything anyways. The only thing about this that might get the UFC to change, and I've kind of been on the record on this, is that if this opens the door for like a recurring door of like antitrust, like every 5 years or so, there's a class action lawsuit to get the UFC to pay out like $500 million. Maybe at that point they start to do something. But I think at the end of the day, it's not gonna really change all that much. Unfortunately, because I just don't foresee the antitrust courts ever actually taking an antitrust action demanding literal change. Now, we have seen some change with how they do this. The sunset provision, for example, got brought in because of this antitrust, not necessarily this one, but like the antitrust in general process. So there may be some small incremental changes, and I would like to see that continuously happen over time. Let's see here. What else is going on? We have Dana White crapping on Francis Ngannou again, and in a manner that I find very transparent. Because if you listen to what Dana White is saying, he is saying that Francis Ngannou is all about the money. But he also wants you to believe that the money answer, the best payday, the most secure payday, the most stand-up, financially solvent deal was to sign with the UFC. And I guarantee you that it was not. Francis Ngannou has talked about the numbers on the MMA Hour, and I think in other places as well, as to how this, boxing PFL sojourn has made more money than anything he did in the UFC or anything that he was offered by the UFC. And I believe him because, let's be honest here, again, this has been the problem with fighter pay, is that the numbers are there. We know the percentages. No, we don't know UFC individual fighter pay because they don't go to many states that force that to be made public. Basically just Utah, I think, essentially. Utah and California that actually force us to, have that individual look behind the curtain. So no, we don't know, but we do have a rough idea. We know what the total pool is for the fighters. And there is no way that there is a large number if any, fighters that are making substantially big money. Obviously, like a Conor McGregor when he fights is making big money. A John Jones when he fights is making big money. That's kind of it. And of course, he also, I think, brought out the fact that at one point they were pondering cutting Francis before he became champion, and that would have just been a travesty of justice. Like, how happy, how angry would you have been if the UFC had cut Francis Ngannou, and you got this alternate reality where you knew this man was one of the most violent, like, knockout artists on the planet, and we're gonna give like Bruno Silva, who's fighting on this card, who's 1-5 in his last 6. No. We got to keep Bruno Silva around. We got to do that. It's the frustrating thing is that the UFC, it's not that, the UFC's treated Francis Ngannou unfairly. It's that they've treated him unfairly in a way that just spites their own business. Like, it is that they're like just trying to come up with any, well, specifically Dana is trying to come up with like any insult possible, because a fighter, and to be clear, I've said this, I don't think this is going to work out for the PFL. I don't think this is necessarily going to change fighting in general, but Francis Ngannou got the bag over the UFC, and they're very angry about it, and it's pretty funny. Anyways, otherwise, I guess the only disappointing thing is that if you are an MMA social media, there are a bunch of people currently defending Donald Trump by talking up the 1920s, 1930s German military system and ignoring its horrible flaws. And that has been a fun time. Anyways, let's get into the fights. But first, let's talk about gambling real quick here. I'm going to be talking about gambling. I'm going to be talking about betting odds. I'm going to be talking about who's going to win. I'm going to even talk about who I am betting on. That being said, you should not bet heavily on MMA. That is not a path to financial freedom. The sport is inherently volatile, unpredictable, etc. Do not bet what you cannot afford to lose. Please, God, I really, really, really hate reading on Twitter some dude betting like 50 grand on a fight and losing. Oh God, that is incredibly stupid. Just do not do that. Do not do that. What I do is I put $100 aside at the beginning of the year. That's my January. I'll add 100 to it in February, March, etc. And that's my betting pool. That's it. If that gets up to being like 20 grand, 30 grand, okay, I've got that to play with. But that means I've been doing very, very well up until this point. It has not happened yet. I did cash out one year at $11,000. There you go. Anyways, let's roll. Let's get into the fights. Let's talk about this. Ilia Topuria versus Max Holloway, UFC featherweight title. This is a heck of a fight. I'm excited. If you're not excited, I'm just questioning your bona fides as an MMA fan, because this is going to be phenomenal. This is going to be fantastic. The rise of Topuria has been a heck of a thing to watch. Spanking Ryan Hall on the ground, the insane victory over Alexander Volkanovski, becoming instantly, with that one win, a guy who can lay claim to a top spot in the division, a top spot pound for pound, which he was not in consideration for, but he is the guy that solved Alexander Volkanovski. Now, this is an amazing run, but it does have some asterisks next to it. Volkanovski had lost to Islam Makhachev before that twice, and obviously that took a little bit off of it. Took a little dust off of it. It was the first win anybody's had at 145 against Volkanovski, but it was a Volkanovski coming off of 2 losses. Or I forget if it's 1 loss and... Hang on. I need to get my timeline. No! I forgot. Was it back-to-back against Makhachev, or was there the Yair Rodriguez fight in the middle? Yeah, okay, the Yair Rodriguez fight was in the middle. Okay, so it was two losses in his last 3. Anyways. And of course, Max Holloway needs no introduction, I don't think. But anyways, I guess the asterisk of the run of Topuria is that there is the incredibly very good win over Josh Emmett as well, but that is kind of about it. You remember the Jai Herbert fight. Jai Herbert gave him problems. You remember the Bryce Mitchell fight. Bryce Mitchell gave him problems. You even guys like David Jackson, Yusuf Zalal gave him problems. And like, what was part of this? Well, it's being long and rangy, being a problem. And I mean, Max Holloway, I know he's only 5'11" and only a 69-inch reach. And I every time I see that, I'm greatly confused because Max Holloway fights much longer. It's like he has a magical power that is adding like 5 inches to his reach or something. I don't know how to explain it necessarily any better than that. So that's the big question going into this fight: is that Ilia Topuria is a very good boxer, a guy who is learning better and better things every time out, and has surprisingly good defense, fundamentals, shoulder roll, etc. for an MMA fighter. Like, keep in mind, MMA is like the home of really bad boxing defense. And Ilia Topuria, despite like not having a boxing coach for like a large section of his career, has developed a like actually really slick defensive game that opens up counters, that opens up the ability to pressure without having to worry about it. Like, he gets hit a lot, don't get me wrong. Even Volkanovski hit him like something like 43% of the time. But the way he absorbs that punishment is very impressive. And yes, he got dropped by Jai Herbert. He got hurt. It's possible. It's on the table. But it has been very, very, very hard. And I would say the only thing I'm critiquing this fight is that this fight should have probably happened in Spain. The UFC, I think, is missing a treat again. They've done this a number of times. They never had Conor McGregor fight in Ireland. They have failed to put together cards that you would cachet on the big name in their environment. Now, I get why Max Holloway, for example, is not fighting in Hawaii. I understand that. I would love to see Hawaii card, but I get it. I get that the cost of setting up a card in Hawaii probably does not make financial sense for the UFC. I understand that. But why is this not in Madrid, Spain? With the cachet that Topuria has over there, that would have been a huge money cow. But anyways, maybe we'll still get it. Maybe we will get it at some point, but it is not happening right now, and I doubt that it will. So you have Max Holloway, who is 32 years old, and I want to be clear on this. Like, people have been debating this. They're like, well, he's 32. He's just starting his prime. He's just getting there. It's like, no. The prime is nebulous, is what I guess I'm saying here, is that it doesn't begin at the same age for everyone. It doesn't end at the same age for everyone. There are guys like Randy Couture who started really, really late in fighting and ended up probably having a prime in their 40s. Holloway has been in the UFC for like 10 years. He was 22 when he was signed. He was 2 years into his career at that point. And that's the problem, is that he started so early that the prime came early. He's definitively not. I'm sorry. He fought great against Arnold Allen. He fought great against Yair Rodriguez. He fought great against Justin Gaethje. It's still a very, very good Max Holloway. But it is not the Max Holloway. It is not the sharpest Max Holloway. It is not the prime, apex Max Holloway. There are only so many ways I can say this. So, and he's adapted his style. He's no longer as pressured as he used to be. Because, like, that was the thing about Max Holloway, is that he would take the front foot from you and drown you in volume. And he doesn't really do that anymore. Don't get me wrong. Still fights at an insane pace. But it's not the same kind of fight anymore. He's more back foot. And that's the problem, is that if you're going to let Topuria have the front foot, if you're going to let Topuria figure out your jab vis-a-vis with pressure, I think that's going to be very, 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 very hard for Max. And there is the takedown option. Let's be real here. Even when he got rocked by Jai Herbert, which is a fight we're referencing a lot because, like it or not, I mean, it's really weird to say like Jai Herbert represents Max Holloway in this matchup, because it's very, well, Jai Herbert's not as good as Max Holloway. It's not even close. But that's kind of the thing, is that if you're going to let Topuria pressure and he's going to meet your jab and he's going to take the Alexander Volkanovski game plan from, I would say, the second fight most likely, and break you down, it's gonna be hard to see Topuria losing that because Max is not a big one hitter. He is dynamic. He will do some things like, interesting utilization of spinning back kicks. Something that Joe Rogan believes is a very recent update, which is not the case. I'm hoping we don't get Rogan commentary. I don't know. I guess I'm not gonna like the UFC commentary on this, regardless of who they pick, because unless it's Paul Felder, and it's not gonna be, Laura Sanko, I'm not gonna enjoy it. But what I'm getting at is I have no doubt that Max Holloway will have solutions. Max Holloway will have moments, but I don't believe he has the raw power to really check Topuria's pressure. And I'm not sure that the existing Max, 32-year-old Max, is actually capable of knocking Topuria off the front foot. But we'll see. And I'm not 100% certain that Holloway can avoid necessarily wrestling with Topuria if that has to become a part of the game. So Topuria is an incredible game planner. He is a guy who you listen to him talk, and there is a deeper understanding of the MMA meta than most people possess. And he is the guy who probably can go over Alexander Volkanovski's game plans, plural, to beat Max Holloway and take what he likes and what he believes he can replicate from them and apply them to Max Holloway. So I am going with Ilia Topuria. I am picking him by decision because Max is still insanely durable. And Topuria is the minus 230 to minus 265 favorite. Holloway plus 190 to plus 205. If you can get underdog odds on Max Holloway, it's never exactly a terrible idea to go down that road. But I would also say that Topuria at those odds is bettable as well. Co-main event is a fight that I have already broken down in the past. And I've only become more, let's just say, confident in my pick since then. And that is Robert Whittaker versus Khamzat Chimaev at 185 pounds. I broke this fight down about 4 months ago when it was supposed to happen. And then Chimaev pulled out and we got Ikram Alaskarov instead. Alaskarov got, poster childed by Robert Whittaker. It is a pretty simple fight. I don't trust Chimaev at middleweight. At 170, don't get me wrong. I want to make this clear. Chimaev is a very talented technical wrestler and grappler. And I'm trying to figure out how I want to put this about his striking, because it's not that I think he's necessarily like a sound technical striker, but he has the power, the fearlessness, the eyes to go at it. But all of this was at 170. His 185 resume is beating Gerald Meerschaert, he beat him in the way that you beat Gerald Meerschaert generally. You catch him early, you hit him, he's cold, comes out cold. It is what it is. And then a fight against Kamaru Usman, who is actually a 170er and old and broken down and has no knees left. And he really, really struggled. And he also really struggled with Gilbert Burns. And don't get me wrong, that Gilbert Burns fight is phenomenal and a great display of the warrior of Chimaev, fighting through being tired and so on. But he was also facing an aging Gilbert Burns, who is a former lightweight and had a massive size advantage on. So Chimaev at 185 just has that size problem that, like it or not, when you are a predominant wrestler and bully grappler, size is something that, it worked. You were a huge welterweight. You're still a big middleweight. Don't get me wrong. I'm still going to pick Chimaev against a lot of people, but he's jumping in right now against Robert Whittaker, who's like the number, 3 guy in the division. So it's hard to see that being a good thing. And he's also talking about retirement and medical issues and so on. And he does not look good. He does not look good. And here's the thing. It's been 2 years since he dominated Kevin Holland. It is 3 years since that fight and 2 years since that fight with Gilbert Burns. I cannot trust it. I cannot trust it. Yes, I know DDP went out there
and head and arm throw Whitaker into oblivion. And that doesn't exactly say great things about what is going to happen against another physically imposing wrestler kind of guy. But Robert Whitaker is hard to out wrestle. He is a great striker. He is a phenomenal anti-wrestler striker for the most part. And I have to pick him. And a lot of people are picking Chimaev. I don't necessarily blame them. But I think this is a case of like a hype train that probably should have cooled off a while ago. And we're talking about a guy who has been asked to be allowed to retire. We are talking about a guy who said he retired and then Kadyrov got in his ear. And who knows what he threatened or promised to get him to continue fighting. I don't know. But it does not feel good. It does not feel great. And also, I honestly wouldn't be surprised if this fight just got canceled. So I've got Whitaker by TKO just because it's a 5-round fight, and I don't see like 4th or 5th round Chimaev surviving if indeed he looks like what I'm thinking he's going to look like. Chimaev is the favorite, minus 245 to minus 265. I'll be betting on Whitaker. He's plus 200 to plus 210. I'll probably work out some kind of not parlay, but prop bet on that one as well to maximize some possible earnings because I really feel confident in Whitaker. I could be wrong, and if I am wrong, it'll be very, very obvious very early when like Chimaev just goes out there and takes his lunch money. Like there is a world where that happens. There is a world where I am reading too much into the body language. I am reading too much into the retirement talk. I am reading too much into the cancel fight with Whitaker already. But here I am reading into that. There you go. Magomed Ankalaev versus Alexander Rakic in a fight that doesn't make any sense because Rakic is on a 2-fight skid. And it's also like stylistically just kind of dull. Rakic is a slow-paced kickboxer who has not won in 3 years. And now you'll say, well, it's only been 2 fights. True. It's just Jan Blachowicz and Yuri Prochazka, and that is pretty damn impressive. But you have a guy who really should be getting a title shot. Let's be honest here. He should have got it before Khalil Roundtree. Probably honestly should have got it before Yuri Prochazka even. And here we are. We are doing this whole thing where like we have to keep him away from Alex Pereira. And I understand why. I obviously like it's very, very easy to understand why. It is exceptionally easy to understand why that is the case. But I don't know. I wish there was some kind of honesty because apparently, like Dana White has told Ankalaev, he's still not getting the title shot if he beats Rakic, and it's boring. Which to me doesn't really make any sense. It's not one. Ankalaev's fights have not been that bad. Don't get me wrong. His Jan Blachowicz fight is it's terrible. That Jan fight, it's incredibly frustrating. But the other fights are largely fine. He should be winning by more. I wish he had a killer instinct. I wish he had a mental game which would actually take advantage of the fact that he is like the only 205er who can wrestle well and do good things in that regard. So it should be better. But like they're entertaining enough. People have been putting up like, his finish against Marcin Preciado and like the Kudalava fights as like examples of like finishes. And like he has finishes. They're pretty cool. They're fine. Like his fight with Johnny Walker is fine. I don't really know why he's gotten the label of being boring necessarily. He's just very, very frustrating. But like more importantly that is that a fight against Rakic and a fight against Pereira just are not the same thing. Let's say he goes out there and he puts on a good show against Rakic. Let's say he goes out there and crushes Rakic. And the crowd is on their feet. Probably not as some of these, but that social media is abuzz with like, oh my God, Magomed Ankalaev is the real deal. He's amazing. We finally want to see him get his title shot. There's no guarantee that his fight with Pereira won't just suck. So I don't understand the idea of like, and again, that's hearsay, but like, I don't understand the idea of like even putting that together. I don't understand the point of putting him against Rakic. But anyways, my only thought is that they're hoping that Rakic will win. And I wouldn't count on Rakic to win. He did not look good against Yuri Prochazka. And I know it's Yuri Prochazka. How do you prepare for that? But he coming off a major leg injury against Jan Blachowicz, where his leg kicks became, a weapon against him. and now 32 years old. There's just no guarantee that Rakic is the guy anymore. There's no guarantee that he's not. Like, he's still massive. He's still huge. He's still a good athlete. But there was a lot of like question marks I had on Rakic's game going into that Jan Blachowicz fight that were not answered in a positive manner. And then I had a lot of questions heading into the Yuri fight about his health. And those were not answered in a positive manner either. So, like, you got to pick Ankalaev, even though this fight could be like a very low output kickboxing match that is just not very good. It could also be Ankalaev going out there and actually crushing him with wrestling. It could, actually, even because Rakic is a good counter wrestler, be Ankalaev going out there and getting out wrestled somehow on the counter by Rakic. There's a lot of options here. But I think that the ways that Rakic wins this fight are just much less likely. I think that Rakic to win comfortably is a guy who has to outmatch you like by a lot. And this is about as close to reach parity as he ever gets. And this is about as close as to athletic parity as he ever gets. And I'm going to take Ankalaev. He should win really, really easily. But like, I think what it comes down to is that like people talk about how unimpressive Ankalaev's resume is. That like it's Thiago Santos and like Anthony Smith, Johnny Walker, that kind of thing. But that's just how 205 is. And then on top of that, you look at Rakic's resume, and like his best wins are the ghosts of Anthony Smith in a fight that was so bad that I question whether Anthony Smith should continue fighting, and Thiago Santos, and a loss to Volkan Huzdemir, as well as the aforementioned losses to Jan and Yuri. And, you know, Ankalaev, it's like, yeah, he beat Johnny Walker. He beat Anthony Smith. He beat Santos. He beat Uzdemir. He beat Krylov. He beat Kudalaba. It doesn't get much better in the UFC's 205 division. It's kind of like the sad thing here. Like, it sounds not overly impressive, but you got to take it into context of the division. So, we got Ankalaev by decision. He could win with the wrestling. He could win with a low-paced kickboxing affair. I think we're going to get the latter. I'm hoping for the former. I'm hoping like even for like an aggressive kickboxing display by him, maybe, but we'll find out. But he's minus 350 to minus 400, which is not really a bettable line. Rakic is plus 260 to plus 300. I wouldn't bet on Rakic just because, again, I don't trust where he is on a mental level or a physical level right now. Lerone Murphy versus Dan Ige. This is a fight I'm really looking forward to. I think it's going to be really good. I think it's going to be really, really competitive. But my analysis of it is going to be like very, very short. Murphy is the better athlete of the two. He is a taller and longer fighter. He and the guys are both predominantly want to pocket strike, but Murphy has the ability to strike from the outside and utilize, you know, that extra bit of reach. It's a 2.5 inch reach advantage and a 2 inch height advantage. It's a typical problem for Dan Ige, is that he really, 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 really either needs to make it a clinch warfare or he needs to make it a pocket boxing match. And it's just the game plan, the ability are both there with Lerone Murphy. He has the ability to just neutralize what we're doing with Dan Ige. And he, I think, has the brains to see that, like, this is the only fight Dan Ige wants. So you just kind of have to deny him that pocket boxing match, which means utilize the reach, utilize your speed, utilize your actually really good athleticism and pretty good, damn good technique, and get the job done. And it's going to be competitive while it's happening. I'm not saying that Ige is not going to be able to get him in the pocket every so often, but like there's just so much of this fight that is just in the purview of Lerone Murphy and not in the purview of Dan Ige. And that's an unfortunate thing for Ige because, like, dude is a company man. The whole thing with the Diego Lopez fight is insane. And I would like to see Dan Ige win, but I got to pick Lerone Murphy by decision. I think it's going to be a 15-minute war. I am expecting both of these guys to get hit hard, but it's just I don't see Dan Ige winning unless Lerone Murphy just gives him the fight that he needs and wants. So essentially, I would need to see Lerone Murphy have a crisis of ego and end up in an Ige fight. Murphy is a minus 265 to minus 320 favorite. Ige plus 205 to plus 240. Magomed Shara Bullet Magomedov. He's going with Magomed first. Versus Armin Petrosian. The UFC has matched up Shara Bullet pretty well here with a guy who probably is going to mostly stand with him. Armin Petrosian can wrestle a little bit, but it's not great. And I'm not sure I would recommend it. I've seen a lot of people on Twitter suggesting that he's just going to wrestle him, but I'm not thinking so. Maybe it's just a vile reaction to the hype train that Shara Bullet has, and I'm sure it is. And I'm ignoring that 185 is not very good. You do not have to be a well-rounded fighter to compete here, etc., etc. You can just be a big guy who has good power and kicks really well. But I just can't get on that hype train with Shara Bullet. I can't. And it's not like I'm picking people to beat him, because obviously I picked him to beat Tricoli. I think I did get suckered into picking Michael Oleksiejczuk to beat him, which was a mistake. But he's really just a kicker. He has a hard time getting to his boxing game, which can look good, but is not necessarily all that good. And again, I want to say this. For a man with probably 2 messed up eyes, and probably the worst eyesight of any fighter that we've ever had, he's better than he has any right to be. I want to make that quite clear. But the lack of a boxing game, the lack of a wrestling game, the lack of a grappling game that's really all that good, I can't do it. I can't do it. The UFC will probably, commentary team will probably overhype Armin Petrosian's kickboxing game, but he is a very, very, very solid fundamental kickboxer who will put a pace on you. And that's the other thing. Shara Bullet also gets tired. Don't get me wrong. He can fight 15 minutes. It's not like he gasses out and he's done. But he does fade down the stretch. The guy is probably about a round and a half of high intensity fighting, and then a round and a half of low intensity fighting. So I look at Petrosian. He'll work the body. He'll work the legs. He'll work the head. He works all 3 levels. He works at a good pace. He works behind a jab. He works with some kicks. Nothing about Shara Bullet's game should really surprise him or be a problem for him, outside of just being 6'2" and pretty physical. But Petrosian's way of losing has been heavy grappling performances by Kyle Bahayo and Adolfo Vieira. I don't see Shara Bullet doing that. I don't. Just don't. Don't get me wrong. There's a big problem here. Petrosian has no dynamic power. He's not a danger to finish you at any time. He is a guy who's going to win decisions, and that's what he's going to do. I don't think he's finished anybody. Hang on. Let me pull up his career here. The history of Armin Petrosian finishes, I'm pretty sure, is very limited. He finished everyone before getting to the UFC, I guess. Including his guy on Contender Series. Body kick, head kick to ground strikes, punch. 2 generic KOs. Anyways, I guess he has in fact been finishing people, and I just was watching his UFC fights where he goes to decision with Gregory Rodriguez, AJ Dobson, and Christian Leroy Duncan. So, there you go. I'm going with Petrosian. with a decision. There's just too many flaws, too many areas that Shara Bullet is pretty bad at. And I also think that there's a general ego issue with him where I think he believes he is far better than he is. And that's a common thing for fighters. Don't get me wrong. That's a common thing. But I think it's a bigger problem when you have a guy like Shara Bullet. And I don't think he realizes his own limitations. Petrosian's the underdog at plus 130 to plus 140. Shara Bullet is minus 160 to minus 175. It's not disrespectful. I'm okay with that. Petrosian's a 500 UFC fighter, and Shara Bullet has been winning. Despite my my reservations, he's been winning. So I'm okay with that betting line, but I will be going with the underdog. Ebal Aslan versus Rafael Sequeira. I'm just gonna go with the underdog here, which happens to be Ebal Aslan. He's also the younger fighter, so I'm hoping his fight with Anton Turkalj, where he looked pretty bad in terms of form breaking down and getting tired and so on, but also dominating somehow. It is a hilarious fight. Please go watch it. If you've not seen Ebal Aslan versus Anton Turkalj, I can't really describe it other than it's something you kind of have to see. It's hilarious. These guys are both can crushers who happen to be pretty decent athletes who hit hard, but have like no real concept of like functional defense. So I don't trust either of them. I wouldn't pick either of them to win if I was dealing with. I didn't actually write down my pick here. Ibo Aslan by TKO. I'm just hoping that one of them goes out because I think if this fight goes long, it's going to get really, really, really sloppy and kind of dull. But anyways, I'm really just picking Aslan because he's a plus 100 to minus 110 fighter. So he's like even money to underdog odds. And Zakara is minus 110 to minus 121. I will say that like I'm more interested in Ibo Aslan as well. Like I said, he's 6 years younger. So like he has time to develop and turn into something because 205, you can have a pretty late prime there. But Sakara being 34 years old and being what he is, I don't really see it as like anything. Like his record is really, really padded. Whereas like Ibo Aslan at least does have wins over Robert Valentine. He's not a terrible fighter, not a good fighter, but he's not a terrible fighter. And Anton Turkalj, who's probably the best fighter either of these guys has beaten. And that's kind of sad. Jeff Neal versus RDA, Rafael Dos Anjos. I don't have much to say. RDA is 40 years old, and I'm generally not picking him at 170. I don't think his game functions there. He lost to the ghost of Vicente Luque, who lost to Jeff Neal. That being said, I'm not MMA mathing this. It's just the point is that if you watch that fight with Vicente Luque, you see RDA getting basically whatever kind of fight he wants. His entries to the clinch were not denied. His entries to trying to dictate how the fight was happening weren't denied, and he still couldn't make things happen against a guy who we're pretty sure is kind of done. Like that's a paper tiger in Luque. So he's going out there against a guy who, yes, is very, very predictable. Jeff Neal is exceptionally rote in his striking, but he is facing a guy who's like really, really athletic, really powerful, really strong, taller than him, longer than him. It's a 75-inch reach to a 70-inch reach. And is it like a legitimate physical presence at 170 in a way that RDA just is not. So the age, the size, the speed, the explosiveness, the strength, it's really just more or less that I can't trust RDA at 170 anymore. Neal by decision is the pick. TKO also on the table. He's minus 285 to minus 333, 35, pardon me. And RDA is plus 230 to plus 250. And then this is another one. Like, this is what I meant when I said the undercard. Like, I spent probably about 20 minutes on the main card. I'm going to spend like maybe 10 minutes on the undercard. Mikapek Oralbai versus Matusz Rambeski. This is a really, really, really simplest fight because it's a single point of failure. Both of these guys can do other things. Don't get me wrong. They can strike and scramble, but they both do their best work when they get takedowns and put the other guy on his back. At the end of the day, Oralbai has the on paper better wrestling game. I'm not 100% sure. I think we'll get our answer very, very early. But Rambeski does tend to fade because he is jacked up bowling ball, and Oralbai does not. So if it's not instant success for Rambeski like that, Oralbai should take this fight over, and I have him by decision or a late TKO, possibly. I don't think you can submit Rambeski. There's no arms, there's no legs, and there's no neck to work with. So Oralbai by decision, late TKO on the cards. He's minus 298 to minus 333. Rambeski is plus 235 to plus 260. Abus Magomedov versus Bruno Ferreira is another fight where I just don't trust, and I'm just going to go with the underdog. Like, Abus Magomedov is very, very big. He's 6'2", 78-inch reaches at 185. That's quite large. Ferreira is not. He's 5'10", 72-inch reach. He probably should be fighting at 170. Abus is coming off his best fight, probably of his career against Warlley Alves, where he just had a dominant victory. But Warlley Alves is a guy on a nosedive of a career who is a 170er. And again, with Abus, the problem is that everything I say about him is he's just big. Like, he's strong, he's big, he's powerful, and that's kind of about it. Like, his technique is kind of garbage. There's some jank to it that allows it to be surprising. Uses angles that a lot of people probably wouldn't think of, maybe for good reason. But we've also seen him have cardio issues, and like outside of the Warlley Alves fight, he's not looked like he's capable of being dangerous in like the second round. So I don't trust Bruno Ferreira, but he is a powerful guy. He's shown seemingly a good chin. He did get knocked out by Nursultan and Ruzi Boev. And my God, if like anyone can do Ruzi Boev stuff, maybe it is Abus Magomedov. But Ferreira's got a good fundamental clinch judo game. I don't trust his gas tank, but it hasn't really been a problem yet. I just don't trust it because of how jacked up he is. Like he looks like a guy who's probably going to gas out, whereas Abus is a guy we have seen gas out. So I'm going with Ferreira by TKO, really just because he's a plus 110 to plus 125 underdog. I would not trust him. And Magomedov Abus is minus 138 to minus 150. I'm never betting on Abus at favorite odds. I'll just say that right now. So if you're gonna bet Ferreira, but do not bet big because this is a crappy fight. It might be fun, but it is a crappy fight. Kennedy Njoku versus Chris Barnett. This is one that has insane odds. I'm just going to get right to the odds on this one. And Njoku is minus 649 to minus 750. Barnett plus 450 to plus 525. I'm not picking Barnett, but like that is disrespectful odds. Kennedy does start fights very, very cold. He doesn't have the greatest chin. He doesn't have the greatest defense. I could totally see him getting caught by something stupid by Barnett. That being said, Barnett is a 5'9" heavyweight, and that's kind of really all there is to it. He will shock the world periodically, and I'm here for it. I want him to win enough that he stays around for like a long, long time, but like he is pushing 40. Kennedy is coming up from 205. I don't really know about this move for Kennedy because, to be honest, really what he had going for him, and it's applicable here, so that's why I'm picking him. But like what he had going for him at 205 is like physicality and size. He's 6'5", 83-inch reach. He is huge. But like I said, there's a significant durability to him and like I think confidence issues. That fight with Ovince St. Preux is a fantastic example of what I mean by this is that he went in there with a guy who I think we know is shot. I mean, even Ryan Spahn knew he was shot. And he lost a split decision that probably shouldn't have been split at all and got knocked out by Justin Jacoby and lost to Nick Mariano and lost to Daun Jung. Yeah, he also finished Devin Clark and also beat Ian Kudalaba and Carl Roberson. I don't know what to tell you. He's very, very inconsistent. He's got all the physical gifts you could want to be a successful heavyweight or 205er. He's got some power. He is, like I said, huge. And he's got a decent coaching staff behind him that sometimes put together like a pretty good game for him that utilizes the fact that he is pretty good in the clinch and that he, when he is confident and working behind a jab, he's actually pretty good. But he should not be minus 600, minus 700 material. But I am picking Kennedy by TKO. Barnett does tend to get tired. Farid Basharat versus Victor Hugo. This is Murphy versus Ige kind of 2.0 in the sense that I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be a very, very interesting fight. It's going to be competitive. I think the odds are insane on this one. This is another one that's really, really wide for no real apparent reason. But at the same time, I think the analysis is pretty, standard. Basharat is better. Victor Hugo is a good kickboxer. He, however, also gives you a lot of clinch opportunities. Basharat is also a good kickboxer with a surprisingly functional wrestling game, which when he can work them together is really, really good. It's a bit weird that he's been giving Victor Hugo, who's 1-0 in the UFC after like beating Taylor Lapilus and Damon Blackshear in his last 3. You would think he would be getting something higher profile here. But yeah, I expect some competitive kickboxing. I expect Basharat to get some takedowns and utilize that as a game changer. And not that Victor Hugo cannot grapple. Obviously he can. He's not getting tapped by just about anyone, and I'm not picking him to get here. But if you give Basharat top control, he's probably winning the fight. If you can't shut Basharat out of the wrestling game, he's probably winning the fight. So Farid Basharat by decision, he is minus 649 to minus 700, making him the second biggest favorite on the card, which is weird. Victor Hugo plus 440 to plus 500. Bruno Silva versus Ismail Nardiev. Now, this is the fight that should have really long odds, and it isn't. Nardiev's the favorite, and I don't know why. Why is this fight happening? I assumed this was an emergency, like, short notice fight, but it appears not to be. Nardiev's not listed as a short notice opponent here on the Tapology. Let's see here. And no, not on Bruno Silva's page either. Yeah, I don't get it. I understand that Bruno Silva is 1-5 in his last 6. And that includes a very sad loss to Chris Weidman that should not happen, just in general. But it's also losses to GM3, Alex Pereira, Brendan Allen, and Char Bullet. And a really, impressive stoppage still over Brad Tavares. You stop Brad Tavares, that's still kind of a big deal. Beating Brad Tavares, not so much. But stopping him, kind of a big deal. Bruno Silva's a big puncher. He's got a capable grappling game. Nardiev is a guy who, at 155 and 170, relied a lot on size. Is now fighting at 185. He is himself 1-2 in his last 3. I don't understand. I don't get it. He was in the UFC before for a 4-fight run. Was a surprising, not re-sign because he did go 2-2, but wins over Michel Pehe and Isai Barazada and losses to Chance Rencontre and Sean Brady. Now, Sean Brady, not a problem. Chance, a little bit of a problem. He's just not very good at anything. He's a leap blower striker who uses raw physicality to get takedowns. He's going to be smaller than Bruno Silva. They're the same height and same reach. Silva is much more, thickly built. I don't get it. I get that Silva's 1-5. I understand that. I understand. But the worst guy to beat him in that time period is either GM3 or Shahar Bullet. Nardiev's not even a middleweight. In fact, I'm honestly a little bit curious here. Has Nardiev ever fought at middleweight? Okay, his last fight was at middleweight. But before that, it was catchweight. Catchweight's at 175 for the record. Catchweight. Welterweight. And then, we're back in the UFC run. Welterweight. He may never fought at 155. I thought he had a 155 fight at some point, but that does not appear to be the case. Also, it should be mentioned, I don't think he even weighed in at 185 for the fight at 185 against Tahar Hadby at Brave CF79. I've not seen the fight. I don't know. But I'm looking at his Tapology and his last weigh-in is listed at 173.75.3. Like I said, I don't understand this fight at all. I don't understand the signing. I don't get it. I do not understand. I'm picking Silva by TKO because Nardiev's not that durable. Anyways, Nardiev is a -164 to -175 favorite. Silva's +134 to +145. I'm taking the Silva underdog out there because as much as I don't trust him to fight, I don't think Nardiev's any good. We're not Fakhretdinov versus Carlos Leal. This is a much better fight, even though it is a short notice replacement. Leal is a PFL veteran, if you're not aware of him. He has solid size, and he's a pretty decent kickboxer at 170. He is nothing mind-blowing, but he's a solid addition. He's going to be kind of a hard out for anybody. Does the fundamentals right. Doing his thing. And probably going to lose. Rinat Fakhretdinov is a pretty simplistic fighter. He is an overhand right into takedowns over and over and over again and has a really, really good top game. It's not the most exciting game. It's not the most diverse game. But unless you can physically match up with him as a wrestler, it is pretty hard to see. As much as I don't think he beat Nicholas Dalby, it was enough to go the distance with Nicholas Dalby and, get a win. And, again, as short notice fights go, Carlos Leal is a good pickup, but he is probably going to lose. This is a surprisingly close one. Leal is only +170 to +194. Picking decision, by the way. Fakhretdinov -215 to -245. That's a bettable line. We're not Fakhretdinov. I know the shine is off of him. Like there was a one point where he had a lot of like shine going on. People were very, very big on him after the Bryan Battle fight and the absolute destruction of Kevin Lee. But the draw with Eliza Zaleski and the split decision quotation air quotes win over Nicholas Dalby have taken a little bit of wind out of his sails. But like this is a big drop down from those guys to Carlos Leal. And I say that as a guy who likes Carlos Leal and thinks he's a, again, a perfectly good addition to the division, but he's coming in on short notice and he has a style that is more akin to Bryan Battle than anything else. So I think Fakhretdinov's got that. Anyways, enjoy the fights nice and early. Check out the links in the description for my social medias, for my video gaming stuff, and well, that's really about it. But also the Discord Fight Simulator. I will see you after the fights.